Self-care isn't selfish. For the past 4.5 years, I have had the privilege of leading military formations that consist of thousands of people. And the common tendency, or at least my tendency when given this level of responsibility, is to work longer and harder to make sure you're doing everything possible to care for your people while getting the mission done. But what I've come to learn over the years is that self-care is not selfish. One of the leadership lessons that we're taught is to do the things that only you can do, particularly as your scope and your span of responsibility increase. I know that when I take time for my fitness, for example, my work decisions are clearer. My demeanor is better. I am more rested. I'm less stressed. And I'm a better husband and father. It's not working longer and harder that makes me a better leader. It's balancing or better balancing work and fitness that make me a better leader. Happy 2024. This is the first podcast episode release of the year. It's also part 3 in a 3-part series of balancing work and fitness. And it's interesting because this series has taken me weeks to complete, and it's largely because of the demands that I have at work. So it's somewhat ironic that this series on balancing work and fitness is taking me such a long time to complete or to get through because of that very thing, because of the balance that I have to try to maintain with work, at least in this case. So, there are a number of different types of work requirements depending on your job. But whether you're a CEO, a business owner, a contract worker, consultant, a salaried employee, an hourly wage worker, or a nonprofit worker or volunteer or anything else, you still need balance. We all need balance. And the same is true whether your work is meant to generate revenue, to impact people's lives, or to make a difference in the world. Personal balance is still necessary. It may feel like you have no control over what happens at work, much less your ability to reduce hours or to step away for a bit to exercise. But I want to encourage you to focus on the things that you can control. If you can't control your work schedule or the amount of time spent at work, then this means you must be more deliberate in controlling the time spent outside of work. Remember, you determine your priorities. The time you spend on different things in your life are an expression of those priorities. As Mark and Angel Chernoff have said, you alone get to choose what matters and what doesn't. The meaning of everything in your life has precisely the meaning you give it. So control what you can control. If you can better balance work and fitness by exerting more control over the amount of time you spend at work, then do that. If instead you have to focus on the time away from work to seek that balance, then do that. At times we get wrapped up in our circumstance or our situation, and we spend too much time focusing on the wrong things. Just recently, I read a post by Seth Godin where he pointed out the difference between problems and situations. And he noted that problems have solutions, whereas situations are simply things that we need to live with. And the mistake that we make at times is in mislabeling problems and situations. The fact that your work situation legitimately prevents you from exercising when you want to isn't necessarily a problem. If you can't change that fact, then it's just a situation that you have to live with. But if you work long hours on your own volition, sacrificing health, fitness, and other important things in life, now that's a problem. And that problem can be solved. The way I typically coach people through this is by applications of the word and versus the word but. And it's as simple as this. Instead of saying, I want to exercise more regularly, but I have to work. Change your phrasing to, I want to exercise more regularly, and I have to work. You see, this correctly labels your circumstance as a situation that you can accept and adapt to versus a problem that you can't solve. Your situation is what it is, okay? So how will you work through that situation to achieve a better balance between your work and your health? As we look to get better at balancing work and fitness, understanding the difference between our actual problems and mere situations is key. Once we understand that difference, then we can work to solve our problems. And this is where measurements of progress become important. We can't lose sight of the problem. The problem in this case isn't your health, nor is the problem that you may need to lose weight, for example. The problem is that there's an imbalance between work and fitness in your life. So that's what you need to fix. And therefore, your progress toward that fix is what you need to measure. It's easy to get confused and try to measure so-called progress towards goals that aren't even a part of what we're trying to do. For example, let's assume you're getting fairly consistent with incorporating time for fitness into your schedule. Jumping on the scale after each workout or measuring the size of your biceps aren't the things that are necessarily important in this case. What is important as you look to better balance work and fitness in your life is the fact that you made time for exercise 3 or 4 times this week. The fact that you deliberately left work earlier than usual to exercise is important. That's an important thing to measure. Making the decision to get up earlier to exercise before going to work, that's important. That's something that you can measure, and it directly relates to what you're trying to accomplish, which is better balance in this case. Progress can be measured in many different ways, but whatever way you choose to measure progress, make sure it's appropriate for the problem that you're trying to solve and the goal you seek to achieve. The goals that I'm talking about here are achieving a healthier lifestyle, perhaps through better exercise habits as it relates to your professional lifestyle. You see, a scale is a tool to measure progress when you're on a weight loss program, and it's not necessarily the best tool at that, if you guys have heard me say before, but that's a topic for a different day. The types of things that you may notice from better balancing work and fitness, though, are things like more energy, better sleep, better decision-making ability, more endurance or stamina throughout the day, lower stress, fewer aches and pains. And most of these things they actually make you more productive at work, which is an added benefit. But the challenge is that they're either difficult to measure or you just don't realize the benefit until it's no longer there. For example, you may not notice that you're thinking more clearly. You just do. You may not notice that you don't have pain. The pain just isn't there. I mean, when was the last time you thought about a pain that you didn't have? Usually when you think about those types of things, it's because either you've had pain in that area in the past and it's no longer there. But you don't just wake up and say, man, I'm so glad that my knee feels really good today. If you've never had knee pain, that's just not something that you think about. So the point in measuring progress when it comes to healthier living is to focus on the things that you have control over. Track the actions that you take toward your goal for better balance between work and fitness. The outcomes of these efforts aren't things that you can directly control. You control how often you create those balance moments, but you don't directly control the results of your efforts. Now, the results you seek are absolutely more likely when you're able to stay consistent with your actions, but you don't directly control the outcome of the work that you put in. So it's important to focus on measuring the right things, and really for 2 reasons here. First, measurements are feedback. If you measure something that you can't control, you're more likely to get discouraged and just give up. And if you give up, I probably don't need to tell you that the probability of meeting your goal is approximately 0%. Okay? What you measure informs how you think about yourself and your ability to continue. Success, on the other hand, that leads to the confidence required to continue. And that's ultimately what we want with lifestyle changes like this. We want to just be able to continue because we get better over time. The second reason why measuring the right things is important is because it gives us a better idea of what we may need to change going forward. If, for example, you didn't meet your goal of leaving work an hour early to exercise, that could mean that trying to leave work early or an hour early was too difficult given the situation. Perhaps you try a half hour early, or perhaps it could mean that leaving work early is just not an option in this case, and that maybe you need to look at trying to exercise before work, or you come into work a bit earlier to allow you to depart earlier, or maybe you move your goal to morning exercise a few times a week. Or perhaps you break away for lunch and then come back after lunch. The feedback that you get from measuring your ability to do any of these things will help you fine-tune your approach and your path going forward. That's the important thing. See, we're all different. Sometimes we look at other people's plans, other people's actions, and try to apply it to us. But really, it's in trying to figure out what works for us. And the way to get better at figuring out what works for us or what works for me as an individual is to try different things and measure my progress in those areas and then adjust from there. So I'll say again that the feedback that you get from measuring your ability to do any of these things will help fine-tune your path going forward. That's important to remember. And it's worth repeating because this is another area where those who seek a healthier lifestyle can get distracted. At times we have to ask ourselves, what am I really doing this for? And in this case, why strive for better balance between work and fitness? I mean, is it really to lose weight? Is it to look better? I'd offer that it may not be either one of those things, but things like those may very well be side effects or side benefits of the steps that you take to better balance work and fitness. I like to think of this as a longer term mindset though, and a longer term approach. It's easy to understand when we think long term versus short term. Put simply, all work and no fitness is bad for your health, and it could very likely lead to higher stress and a shorter life. Period. That's the truth. And it's a long-term mindset. Weight loss, a faster 3-mile run time, 6-pack abs, those are all nice and each may contribute to your overall health, but each of those things still brings us back to a short-term mindset. I want longer and better quality living for you. That's my goal. I'll give you another example of a long-term mindset that I've come to appreciate more, especially after having children. I think a lot about the example that I'm setting for those around me, for my family, and for my children especially. Do I want them to grow up thinking that life is all about work? I mean, I want them to understand the importance of balance and the importance of work and of fitness. And they'll understand this through the example that I set. Similarly, as a senior leader in an organization, I also think about the fact that many others in the organization are actually looking at me and my ability to balance for better or worse as they try to determine whether they want to strive to reach the position that I or my supervisors may hold. If I paint an imbalanced picture, then what's the incentive for these junior members to continue? In many ways, the health and future of the organization depends on the example that I set as the leader. And these are the types of things that a long-term view allows you to think about more. I remember listening to an interview with James Clear from a few years ago where he said, good habits make time your ally. Bad habits make time your enemy. If you have good habits, all you need is for time to work for you. You just need to be patient. And if you have bad habits, you put yourself behind a little bit more each day. That's why small habits matter so much. They don't just add up, they compound. When it comes to striking the right balance between work and fitness, it can be hard to do, especially if you've never known anything different. And like any change in your life, it may take some time to work into. But let me leave you with two more quotes and a final thought. James Clear has also said that new goals don't deliver new results. New lifestyles do. And a lifestyle is a process, not an outcome. For this reason, your energy should go into building better habits, not in chasing better results. And then a quote from Amy Porterfield: people quit because it takes too long to see results. The truth is that learning the process is the real result. Those are long-term views, long-term approaches, long-term mindset that can help us as we're looking to make these lifestyle changes. So be patient with your change effort. Every minute that you reclassify for self-care is not selfish. In fact, it's those balance moments that allow you to keep going as you carry the burdens and responsibilities of your work. So that's it. A bit shorter episode to round out this series. Remember that like most things in life, balancing work and fitness, it starts with your mindset. It requires a disciplined approach, and your perspective remains important. As always, thanks for listening. I hope that you have enjoyed this episode. If you think this can be helpful to someone else, then please share it. You can also download my free single-page guide to gaining the perspective needed for success at tdfitness.net/perspective. And finally, I love comments and feedback. They help me to continue to provide content that is most useful to you. So that's it. Remember, it's important to maintain the right perspective. It does matter. Thanks for listening. Have a blessed one. Coach T, out.